Now, we received orders to go to the Philippines to prepare for the main invasion of Japan, and again, Captain McVeigh asked for an escort. They refused him an escort. Now, here we have a heavy cruiser with no underwater sound gear. So they are sending us out in harm's way, no way to protect ourselves from enemy submarines. Anyway, Commander Hoshimoto was waiting at the crossroads out there, and he had not been successful in getting a large combatant ship. And we pretty much obliged him because on July the 30th, about 14 minutes past midnight, he picked us up maybe 10 miles out or so, and he fires a spread of 6 torpedoes, and he hits us with 2 of them. And of maybe the 1197 aboard, I said that maybe 900 of us got off into the water, which meant about 300 didn't even get off the ship. And that particular night, I was sleeping topside in that, here we are in 100-degree weather out there and no air conditioning on a heavy cruiser. And so since we were traveling, so to speak, the hatches all open and refused us an escort, then it meant that, the enemy isn't out there. Therefore, Captain McVeigh had given us permission to come topside and sleep. And so I got off a watch at 12 o'clock, and I went below deck, and I got my Kapok life I got my blanket. I didn't get my Kapok life jacket. And I came topside, and I went all the way forward under the barrels of number 1 turret, which was within, I would say, 40 feet or so of where the bow of the ship, that first torpedo cut about 45 feet of the bow off. When I say cut it off, if you could just imagine that here the whole bow of the ship is cut off, and so the front end of that ship is just a complete open funnel, and the ship moving forward, then all the water is coming in, and it's all the bulkheads down below are open, all the hatches are open, so water is just gushing in down below. So anyone in the first 100 yards of the ship, which is about half of the ship, they don't stand a chance, especially if they're down any place below the water line. And so then I began to make my way then to my emergency station, which is back midship. But on the way back then, knowing that the ship was doomed, because I could hear the bulkheads breaking below, and I knew that it's, not possible that the ship can recover even before I could get away from the forward area. If you could just visualize the first 100 yards, or all the bow of the ship is under. It's already under the water. And then so much is coming through from that second explosion there on the starboard side, back close to the marine compartment, that we're taking on so much water there that now the water over there is on the starboard side, so the ship is listing to the starboard, and the first 100 yards, so to speak, of it is underwater. And as I make my way then to my emergency station back midship, there were those who were coming out of the forward area, and as they were coming out, you could see that they were in their night clothing. Most of that was officers' quarters. And as they came out on the main deck, they were pleading for someone to give them some assistance. They'd been flash burned because not only the explosions of the torpedoes, maybe as much as explosions below deck and so on. In fact, the explosion from the magazine under number 2 turret, all of the magazine there blew up and went through the top of the turret. And so as they came out on the deck pleading for assistance, I'm making my way back to the quarterdeck, which is my emergency station. And as I was making my way back, I realized I don't have a life jacket, and I knew that the ship was doomed. And so when I get to the quarterdeck, my Marine lieutenant was there, and I see big canvas bags of Kapok life jackets hanging all around, and asked Lieutenant Stauffer permission to cut some of those down. And he said, not until we get word to abandon ship. Well, the ship is sinking. In fact, within a minute of that, the ship, if you could visualize, the first 100 yards or half of the ship is under, and it's listing to the starboard so much that the quarterdeck normally would be 8 feet above waterline, but now we're listing so much that water is on the quarterdeck, and so we're having trouble even to stand on the deck. And that after a period of time, then so much water is coming in now that it begins to erect itself, not completely, but it erects itself some, and then the nose is going under, and then finally word then trickles down then to, there was a Navy commander that came from below deck, and as he came through the hatch, I recognized who he was, but it was nearly beyond recognition. Flash burn, flesh hanging from his face and his arms, and some sailor said, "Get the commander a life jacket." And so someone began to cut those down, and I managed to reach in to get me a life jacket. But a life jacket is a big roll of kapok. I call it a horse collar. And so I grabbed that and I put it on like a vest, but I didn't fast it in the straddle because I knew that momentarily I'm going to be leaving the ship, or the ship is going to leave me. And then word finally trickles down then that the skipper, Captain McVeigh, had given orders to abandon ship. Now all communication was knocked out, all power was knocked out. No lights other than the inferno basically below deck, and some of that coming through the hatches so that you could see intermittently light coming through from the inferno burning down below. And then I managed to get over to what I call the rail, big steel cable across the quarterdeck. And then when word came, then boys rushed over to the high side and climbed over the rail, jumped over the rail, jumped on each other, and to look down in the blackness of the night, looking down at all that oil on the water and realizing that, you know, this is the end of life maybe. And then finally then to step over the rail and make a couple of big long jumps, and jumped into the water feet first. And my kapok jacket, I didn't fasten it in the straddle, so when I jumped in the water feet first, that kapok jacket came up over my head, and then I knew I had to get my head above that oil, and I got my head above the oil then to swim away from the ship, then to see the bow under, the fantail coming high in the air, those 4 big screws still turning. From down below, I'm looking up, and there's some light up there, and I can see boys as they jump. They can't see those screws down below because they're looking at the blackness of the night. They're looking down at the, you know, the oil and so on, and they are jumping in, some actually jumping into those screws. And then I watched the ship then as it nosed down and kind of turned to the starboard and, you know, goes under. And then I'm away from the ship maybe 50, 75 yards or so, and we take an inventory of the little group that I'm in, and best we could kind of count off, there was 80 of us. And then we struggled, you know, through the night. Several did not have kapok life jackets. Some were injured, and they didn't make it till morning. There were 3 of we Marines. One didn't make it till daybreak. And the other Marine, a boy that I refer to as Spooner, Miles Spooner, he'd gone into the water head first, and all that oil in his eyes. Now the next day or two, you know, he's going to try to rub that oil out. But as he rubs that out, the salt water now is turning to powder, and he's rubbing that powder on his eyeballs. So he's going to get to where he can basically, he can't even blink his eyes. His eyes are just big red sores. And he was in misery that the first couple of days.